Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Andy Jones. I'm a co-chair with the Public Forum Committee of the Dallas Bar Association. We're glad that you have been able to join us. We've got a number of folks here. We're going to do quick introductions and then launch into our discussion. First of all, I'd like to introduce Chrissy Castle, the Dallas Bar Association president. Chrissy, thank you for being here and please say hello.
Thank you, Andy. Really enjoy being here. I'm excited to hear today's presentation. And I wanted to welcome all the audience participants to this amazing program and thank Andy Jones and his committee for putting on such an important program during these trying times. And thank the DBA staff, Jessica Smith and Barry Aviana, for getting us all here via Zoom.
Great. I want to make a special introduction to Reverend Neil Thomas. He is with Faith Forward Dallas. He's a co-chair of that organization, which is co-sponsoring this event with the Dallas Bar Association. And Reverend Thomas, we're very pleased to have you here. Would you give us just a real high-level explanation of what your group does?
Certainly, Andy, and thanks very much for inviting us to co-sponsor this with you. Faith Forward Dallas is probably the largest predominantly progressive gathering of clergy, progressive clergy in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We cover the main spectrum of the major religions, and we come together to consult with each other, to support one another, and really to offer a moral voice in Dallas, the DFW region, to guide our civic leaders and to help them and us to make Dallas a better place. We are really founded after the mass shooting of police officers here in Dallas a few years ago. And the clergy believed that we needed to have a response to that. We gathered at Thanksgiving Square for a time to remember. And from that, we realized that we had some real work that we wanted to do together to make Dallas a better place. And so we gather regularly, and as I say, it's predominantly clergy. And we have built relationships in deep and meaningful ways, which I think were substantial enough, especially in light of the conversation we're having today, of supporting the hostage situation in the Collin Synagogue, that we'd already built those relationships because of the work that Faith Forward Dallas does.
Thank you, Reverend Thomas, and you did. You mentioned the genesis of this program. It was the hostage incident that took place in Colleyville at the synagogue there back in January. You know, so many things have happened since then, but this is why the Bar Association wanted to convene this panel. And Rob Crain, a former president of the Dallas Bar Association, has also been involved with this work over the years. And Rob is going to moderate the panel that we have with our guests today. So Rob, without further ado, I'll just turn things over to you and thank you for being here.
You bet, Andy. Thank you for your leadership. And President Castle, I know how busy you are. Thank you for your leadership as well this year. And Reverend Thomas, I know that Almas Musquatwalla, Faith Forward Dallas, a wonderful leader within that organization, I've had the pleasure of working with. I know you're stepping in as she's in India and are on her way, and she will be doing a lot of this work while she is there. And we can't say enough about Faith Forward Dallas. What a wonderful institution, which each of these panel members are part of. So thank you for your participation. We have three wonderful faith leaders for our panel today. Dr. Bob Roberts, Jr., founder of Northwood Church in Keller, Texas. If I got my dates right, it was back in 1985. You look way too young for a 1985.
No, I agree.
Married his high school sweetheart, Nikki, who helped him found that wonderful church. I grew up Baptist in East Texas, passionate about reaching out to others in different faiths. He is a founding force behind Faith Forward Dallas, co-founder of Multi-Faith Neighbors Network as well. And quickly, Dr. Roberts, tell us, I mean, I saw a little of the history where you were one of the first phone calls when Faith Forward Dallas was being formed. Give us a little history of those early moments of Faith Forward Dallas.
We had started doing pastor and imam retreats, me and an imam from the Washington, D.C. area. And it gradually began to grow. And I didn't know Almas that well, but she came to an event we had at our church, and she asked if I'd be willing to visit with her and talk to her about what we did. And I explained it to her. And she asked me, would I be willing to come over and meet with the group that was putting it all together? So I did, and explained some of the unique things that we do. And it's really not necessarily interfaith as much as it is multi-faith. It's not dialogue as much as it is engagement. And it's not theological debate as much as it is just building friendships that you can talk to people. And so some of that was used as it was put together. And I'm grateful for Faith Forward Dallas. And the only reason I'm not in it now is I live over in Fort Worth. And I just concluded one of these days I need to get something like that going over on the Fort Worth side, so that's what we've been doing.
That's wonderful. It's such a wonderful organization and an example for us all. Rabbi Andrew Paley, co-chair of the Executive Committee of Faith Forward Dallas, along with Reverend Dr. Neil Thomas. He's senior rabbi and spiritual leader of Temple Shalom. It's a Reformed congregation in Dallas. He serves on the mayor's task force on poverty, member of the Interfaith Advisory Committee of the North Texas Food Bank, which has been so important during this pandemic. Married to Deborah Niederman, past president of the Association for Reformed Jewish Educators. He's father of two. Molly, a graduate of Duke University. I guess we lost your basketball coach, at least for his last home game last night, from what I'm hearing. And Samuel is attending Clark University in Massachusetts. Rabbi Paley, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Great to be here. And
Imam Azhar, Subedar, I just learned, was it 6 children? Am I counting correctly?
7.
7. So he's beyond man-on-man. You're beyond zone coverage. I mean, I think you're probably into the NFL nickel defense back there. Lots of defensive backs. I'm trying to keep those kiddos in line. He's the Imam and spiritual leader of the Islamic Association of Collin County. Also in leadership of Faith Forward Dallas, currently serving as the convener of the membership committee. He's got a master's in the Institute of Islamic Education from Dewsbury, West Yorkshire, England. Also studied in Canada and Louisiana. I'm not sure which one of those doesn't fit the others, but that's quite a varied educational background. Frequent interfaith speaker and author, and gave prayer just about a year ago during the inauguration festivities for President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. Imam Azhar, thank you for being here.
Thank you to all of you for having us, and good afternoon to all of you, and good afternoon to the listeners who are joining us here this afternoon.
Oh, thank you all so much. We're here in the backdrop of what happened on January 15th, that Saturday back in January, in the hostage taking at Congregation Beth Israel. But before we kind of get into a little of that history and what you all were doing that day and that evening, and your engagement, I just want to step back. Each one of you has been such a leader in that engagement of people of different faiths and bringing people together. And just a big picture question of why? What in your life caused you to say, hey, this is something that we need to do. This is something that's important. And I'm just going to follow my Zoom screen here. And Rabbi Paley, you're up first. What brought you into this arena?
Yeah, thank you. A great question. So for many years, I had been sort of inward focused on my congregation and my community. And it wasn't until about 15 years ago, my congregation, along with our movement nationally, began an experiment in Jewish-Muslim dialogue. Our congregation was paired with a wonderful mosque in Carrollton, and we began to learn together with no other stated purpose than just to find out who our neighbors were. And that began a wonderful moment to broaden horizons, not only for myself, but our congregation. Shortly thereafter, I had the occasion to meet other pastors and imams in our community locally, and this is something sort of amazingly parallel with what Bob was doing in Fort Worth and his area. Friends that I had made with the Unitarian Church in Dallas, Evangelical Baptist Church, and a mosque and a synagogue got together and formed an organization called Friends for Good, where our congregations would gather for the same kind of dialogue and meal and sharing and big questions, and it just sort of began a wonderful adventure of learning and being present. And then when unfortunate moments happened, there was a moment at the mosque in Richardson where gunmen were sort of standing, armed across the street, and it became evident that as wonderful as the relationships were, sort of just having a meal together, that there was an opportunity to parlay that into meaningful action in our community. And we developed a sort of a theology of a ministry of presence and being there and demonstrating that. Then, of course, in July 7th of 2016, when the officers were killed, I had the opportunity to offer a blessing at the memorial service. It actually was after that, in that time, when Chief Brown, a former Dallas police chief, made a plea to the city, saying that we, the police department, were hurting. I went down the next day to the police department and filled out an application to be a Dallas police chaplain, which I've been doing for about 4 or 5 years now. And that led me to these other moments of engagement with pastors and segments of our city. And shortly thereafter, as we were talking earlier, Bob came to Temple Shalom for the founding meeting of Faith Forward Dallas, where we now have somewhere upwards of 60, 70 or so faith leaders, a little bit more, gathering for those opportunities to learn together. And it's just been incredible, and amplifying our voices for the work that we need to accomplish in bringing justice and peace and wholeness and healing to our city. One person can't do it. We were all sort of doing it in our silos, but together, being at the table together and sharing and building those relationships and being able, when needed, to be present and to activate those elements that allow us to expand our reach, our voice, our desires, our hopes, has been profoundly remarkable, really incredible. So speaking personally for a moment, it's been an enriching part of my ministry and work that I've been able to do. I've made deep and abiding friends with those who are here, and so many who are doing our work all over the city. So for me personally, it's been incredible.
Yeah, Imam, Azhar, what in your journey led you to this interfaith work that you've been so passionate about?
I came to America from Canada in 2002. I was born and raised in Canada. I studied, as you said, in Canada, Louisiana. And yes, Louisiana is what's kind of different in this equation. Graduated from England, came back to Canada. I felt that I need to be somewhere where I don't only serve the Muslim community, but I'm able to serve the broader community. In 2003, I was invited to the White House Faith-Based Community Initiatives by President Bush. And that's where I got the first exposure to the importance of interfaith work and collaboration from faith level and government level. That continued to evolve in Fort Myers and then Punta Gorda and then Tampa, Orlando. And what I realized in the 16-year journey of being in Florida was, when we have existing relationships in times of crisis, it's easier to kind of get ahead of the curve. The crisis has occurred. How do we control the situation? How do we heal our communities? And how do we give hope to those who are in fear? That was something I had a firsthand experience with the Orlando shooting. I was called in by the clergy team, although I don't reside in Orlando, but we had relationships, and I was called in to be part of the Orlando shooting response team. And it was in those 9 days that I realized the true power of faith working together. As I left Florida, I never left the city. I left an entire state where I was able to serve in a humble way. Coming to Dallas, I was so enlightened to see, and I was happy actually to see that Faith Forward Dallas was there. And Almas was so amazing. She approached me through Mike to come and join. And what I've seen here in the 3 years I've been here is that, as Rabbi Andrew Paley said, there are relationships that are built here. And those relationships are what we're constantly building. So as these tragedies and crises occur, sadly, in our nation and many times in our city, as we've just talked about, the police shooting, the recent incident that occurred at the synagogue, we're able to come together. It's like a knee-jerk reaction. For me, I was in New York that weekend. I was working, and I found out late Saturday night what happened because I wasn't looking at my phone and following what was happening. I came back Sunday late night, and Monday I was there with my dear friend, with the rabbi, because we need to be together, and we need to help our communities grow together. We're not gonna survive separate, and we're not gonna survive in a way where hatred prevails. Love will prevail, and that's what we're pursuing every day through Faith Forward Dallas.
Great work. And Dr. Roberts, I mean, East Texas Baptist congregation, seen you describe it as a conservative congregation. What brought you into this interfaith world and work that you've been doing for so long?
It's not something I planned on doing or wanted to do or even valued, for that matter. To me, it was, if you're an evangelical, who wants to mess with that? I mean, rather convert people than spend time building bridges to them to get to know them. But what happened was I began to work in Vietnam, and we worked with the Vietnamese government. It's too long to explain to you the whole story, how it happened. But here I am working with communists that I disagree with theologically, politically, every other way. But our church members are using their jobs and school teachers to do education projects there, medical projects. And what happened, I discovered people as human beings instead of projects to be converted. And so I got inside the head of the Vietnamese. I found out, my understanding of the Vietnam War was very different from theirs. I discovered that there were some things that I was wrong about. There were some things I was right about. And we needed one another to understand that. After 9/11, I was asked to do the exact same thing in Afghanistan, to which I said, no way. I got over my fear of Vietnamese communists in a war that I had signed up for in the draft. Why in the world would I want to go halfway around the world to Afghanistan and, in my mind, work with a lot of Muslims that hated Christians and would kill me? And so after people kept persuading me, I went, and I began to work with the imams, and I became friends of theirs. And so I began to take young Baptist pastors from Texas and other parts of the country, and I would connect them with an imam, and together we'd build schools, clinics. And along the way, it just hit me, if these are the baddest of the bad in terms of tough Muslims, and I love them, and they're not anything like what I had in my mind, I wonder how much I've got right and how much is wrong. And so from that, I got to know Muslims, and I became their friends. And so that's gradually what happened. And as a result of that, to be very candid with you, most of the work I did was around the world. It is still to a large degree today. But I was challenged by a man named Prince Turki Al Faisal from Saudi Arabia, who's a friend of mine. And he said, Bob, it's great what you do with Muslims around the world, but what about Dallas, Texas? And I remember telling him, I said, Your Highness, that'd be like you trying to start a Baptist church in Mecca or teach a Sunday school class. It wouldn't go over real big. But I don't know. I got to thinking about what he said one day, and there's a mosque when you fly into DFW airport, you always see on the southeast corner. And so I went over to the mosque, and literally after a trip, I was tired. And I went over, got in the mosque, and the imam said, how can I help you? They said that you want to visit with me. And I scared him to death. I said, I'm a Baptist pastor here in the Metroplex, and I just want to get to know you, and he looked at me funny. And I know he's probably scared to death because we don't have a good reputation for speaking kindly, gently, warmly. But he and I became friends. We started doing things with our church, with our mosque. And then I began to watch our members change their minds. So what happened was I changed my mind, but they'd hear the stories. They were fascinated But what it took was they had to get engaged. So I began to realize the end game was not clerics. Clerics were the gatekeepers. But if you went around the clerics, some clerics would slap your hands. So if I could make the cleric the hero, hey, come on, let's get together. Let's build a bridge. Anything was possible. And so that's what we did. And it just kept growing. And Majid, me, along with a man named Rabbi David Saperstein, who was the ambassador for religious freedom under President Obama, we started from that, the organization, Multi-Faith Neighbors Network. And it's hilarious. I mean, we'll start our retreat, whatever city we're in, and the imams are on one side, the pastors are on one side, the Jews are generally in the middle. We'll both tolerate the Jews, but it's a far stretch from an evangelical to a Muslim. And we'll get in there, and by the third day, they're laughing, having fun, and it just grew. So it's been this journey pilgrimage, and it's not been easy. When you're the majority, you ignore the minority. I mean, you can't keep you're too busy with everything you've got going on. If you got a big church and your denomination and all this stuff, but somewhere along the line, I begin to realize, man, the minority matters. And if I don't make space for them as a majority, they can't do what they need to do. And so I got into the whole concept of what that's like. Little did I know that would help and lead to Christians that are in minority populations around the door, open up massive doors for me to help Christians who are being persecuted in Muslim majority countries. And now it wasn't Bob Roberts, white pastor from Texas, showing up to tell you, let my people go. Instead, it was Imam Majid. We'd go together and I'd just be quiet. I discovered it was a lot more powerful for a Muslim imam to challenge the imams and the religious leaders that were Muslims in that country than a white dude from Texas. And so we learned to work together. So I began to realize I was the key to Islamophobia, not another Muslim or anyone else. I was the key if I would speak up. So I got involved in that. It's been costly. We lost hundreds of members. People, you don't believe Jesus is the only way anymore? No, I still believe that. Then why are you doing that? Because they matter to God. And there were some things that changed. Like, for example, instead of starting with Genesis 3, Genesis 3 talks about how Adam and Eve fell in the garden and so forth. Instead, I went back to Genesis 1. Everyone's created in the image of God. Now, Muslims have a little different take on that. I know they don't believe they believe we're created from God, but not necessarily in the image of God. But I hang in with Andrew Paley at that point. And I honestly believe I ought to first see someone in the image of God instead of how sinners they were. My gosh, if we did that in dating relationships, we'd never get married. We always see the good in someone first. Now, I don't think there's any problem convincing someone they're a sinner. Just hang around with them for a while. Everybody's screwed up, messed up, does things they're embarrassed about, wish they didn't do, would love to go back and change. But they're still created in the image of God. So that's kind of what got me into all of it. And the journey I'm on. I love Andrew. He's been with me around the world. He's been at my church. He'll be at my church Sunday night. Andrew's always trying to convert me to become a Jew. It gets annoying, but I love him anyhow. You know how Jews are. They're always trying to convert people. I don't know what the deal is. But
I think I'll stay out of that fight.
I'm teasing.
You did try it at my temple, though, when he came to speak. Bob opened up on our holiest day of the year. Bob came to speak, Bob and his lovely wife, and had a big gathering in our chapel and talk ostensibly about this work. And Bob, gracious as ever and captivating as always, opened with, listen, I think I'm duty bound to say I want to convert all of you right now. I'm like, well, it is our holiest day of the year, Bob, so thanks for that. But maybe another time, right?
I'm sorry.
Bob, Andrew told me the other day when we had coffee that you tried the same stunt when you were in United Arab Emirates, and so you were really taking a big risk there, trying to pull that with the some Muslim in the Middle East.
The challenge is our tribe. Here's what's sad. We think because we're friends of people in my tribe, they think because you're friends of people of another religion, you must have compromised your faith. And so can I tell you, a lot of what I speak when I'm in a synagogue or in a mosque, I've probably spoken more mosque in the last 3 weeks than any imam, I guarantee you, in the last month, because I've been visiting all these mosques and we're having this big event at our church Sunday night. But your own tribe. I'm speaking to my tribe. I'm saying, I'm here. I've not left my faith. These are my friends. We need to be here. We need to stop being isolationists. So it's quicksand, and there are not many evangelical people that have built these relationships beyond intellectual dialogues. And so the challenge is, I want to bring people with me. And that scares other evangelicals to death, because they think, oh no, our kids are going to, become other religions. And my premise is, if your faith is so weak, it has to stay isolated from other religions, or you have to trash another religion. It must be an awful weak faith.
Well, let's talk about an event that's the backdrop here of our program, where you all did come together. And as Imam Azhar, you mentioned, we were out of town, but made it as quickly as you could on Sunday. And I'll go back to you, Rabbi Paley. There's this wonderful photograph that was taken after the hostage crisis had been resolved. And I do want to make quick note of our law enforcement, because there was law enforcement there that evening from everywhere. The city of Colleyville, Dallas County, Deep Department of Public Safety, Texas, FBI rounded up their team and was from DC in the Virginia area to the site within an hour. I think I even saw a report of 50 to 70 personnel. But it wasn't just law enforcement that evening that was descending upon what was happening in Colleyville and at the synagogue. It was faith leaders like yourselves. And there's a wonderful photograph. I believe Dr. Roberts and Rabbi Paley, you were both in that photograph as well, once the crisis had been subverted. But tell us, Rabbi Paley, about your experience that evening. Put us into that moment. That's the backdrop here for our discussion today, as to why were you there and what was your experience?
Sure. So that Saturday afternoon, my wife and I were at home, really not near our phones or paying attention. We were just relaxing as we would be doing on Shabbat. And there's an organization called the Secure Communities Network, which was a program originated in the Department of Homeland Security during Obama administration, to network vulnerable communities together to provide resources and help should anything happen they need it in some way. The Jewish community here in Dallas is a part of that. Temple Shalom is, and they sent out an email alert that there was an incident at a Texas. It sort of started off kind of innocuous. There was this incident in Texas, and then we got another one that there's an incident in Colleyville. And we knew personally Rabbi Charlie Citron Walker, the rabbi there. He's a friend and a colleague, a supporter of our work. And goodness, how terrible. And of course, by the time we had gotten that alert and sort of turned on the TV, it was already a couple of hours into what was going on, and watching this terrible event unfold in real time on TV. And I know some people are watching the live stream on Facebook and the synagogue's live stream. Horrifying to sort of see that. I have a dear friend who works for Homeland Security and who's also an officer in the Dallas Police Department. So I called him to alert him, as if he wouldn't have already known, and he was already on his way to Colleyville. I said, look, if they, I don't know why, but if they're in need of a rabbi, I'm happy to, help in some way. A few hours go by. I actually had to turn the TV off. It was just too much. So I was actually out at the grocery store. I got a call from my friend who said, we need you to come to Colleyville. The FBI special agent in charge, they needed a chaplain, and they need a rabbi. I'm the only rabbi in the Dallas Police Department chaplain program. So I got in the car. It was about 3:30, 4 in the afternoon. And I went to the Colleyville Police Department. And as you said, the collection of law enforcement agencies and personnel and assets was just staggering to see hundreds of people at all levels of government. When the person made the comment, the hostage taker made a comment about something Al-Qaeda, that activated all levels of the law enforcement apparatus in our government. And they were all present, supporting each other. It was really just amazing to see. My task was to assist the FBI hostage care team, who was working and caring for the families. The church, the synagogue is on the same street as a church, a few blocks so down, where the community had gathered. And I know Bob and some others, as soon as this was happening, it was in his backyard practically. They gathered immediately, again, to show up, to be present, and so on. And as so many others in the community had done. By the time I had arrived, that was just about the time when the first hostage was released, this elderly man. I was able to sort of talk with him and be with him and his daughter for a brief time, and sort of see the way in which, particularly the FBI care team was there for the families and taking care of them. Shortly after, I was at a school just a little bit to the other side of the synagogue, where the regional SWAT team was gathering, the FBI SWAT team, and at about 9 o'clock, as Rabbi said, the hostage rescue team from the FBI, this is the elite team that's on an hour's notice, they arrived. There was about 70 of them in these 2 big trucks. They roll in, and that's when I realized this was not going to be going on far into the evening. Something was going to happen. They were deployed shortly thereafter. I was kind of then all of a sudden very much alone in the school. I left to then join Bob and others at the church. And I had a chance to speak with Charlie's family and some of the others who were there. And it was just a little bit after that, then, that everything sort of unfolded. In the conclusion of that, we were able to have this moment of community-wide relief, that everybody who was involved got out and was, at least at that point, unscathed. Went back to the school, where I was able to see Charlie and the others who were released, give them a big hug, and kind of put a face to the worldwide support that he and his community, and indeed all of us across the Metroplex, were experiencing. All this love and support, just to put a face to it, just to let him know that there were so many literally still there after 10, 11 hours, just being there and being present. And that ministry of presence was really powerful and really meaningful. And I know for Charlie, it was sort of overwhelming to just see all these people, some he knew, most he didn't, but who nevertheless were there to show their love and their care and support. I do have to say, it was a humbling experience to be there, having this very, very small role in a very big day, but to be a part of the apparatus that brought safety and security to our community was really incredible. And I cannot say enough for how professional and how incredibly cooperative and collaborative our law enforcement agencies were, especially the Colleyville Chief Miller was just, opened his doors, let everything happen. And thankfully it resolved itself. There's a teaching in Judaism that says, if you are walking in a town and you see someone's house on fire, you should not say, oh, please let that not be my house, because that's a prayer that is said in vain, which is kind of a no-no. So of course we think, oh my goodness, that could have happened to me or my community, and there is all of that. But the primary focus was not on what we were feeling or what we were needing or how my community may have been, it could have been us, as it were. We were there to be with Charlie and his community, and dealing in the aftermath of all of that. We have the sort of awareness that we have this balance between keeping our community safe and being welcome. And one of the layers, and this is something that I tried to tell my community, one of the layers of security that we bring to our community is precisely these relationships. That when we need a friend, when we need somebody to be there and support and provide an optic of care and concern, on top of all of the other hard assets that we bring to bear, cameras and all of that, that along with all of those other things really, really matters. And in my opinion, and for me personally, and in my heart of hearts, provides just an incredibly powerful layer of care and protection. And processing all of that with our colleagues who were there was really important and really wonderful in a really stressful kind of difficult situation. So I'm glad everything sort of worked out and taught us a lot about the meaning and the power of these relationships.
Imam Azhar, I mean, you mentioned you were in New York and monitoring, and was it with Rabbi Citron Walker the next day? And I cannot imagine as a Muslim person, you've got this imagery that you just got to be thinking, we're just stoking more Islamophobia because there's this man who appears to be a Muslim man who is the perpetrator here, by all indications acting alone, obviously not of right mind, seems to have extremist views, and is demanding the release of a Pakistani neuroscientist who's in jail and having been convicted of trying to harm U.S. servicemen and so forth. But what was so remarkable to me was the response from the Muslim community, yourself included, and then Imam Omar Suleiman, who that evening rushed straight down to the crisis in hopes that he could be of some help if there was a way that he could communicate with this person in any way as Muslim to Muslim and help diffuse the situation, putting himself in harm's way. And I know that Rabbi Nancy Kasten and David Stern of Temple Emmanuel were calling law enforcement saying, hey, this imam's coming down, make sure you protect him and make sure there's not any confusion as to what anyone's doing. But talk to us a little bit about your feelings with all of those dynamics. And obviously you went straight into the fire as soon as you could as well. What were your feelings that day, and what was your experience during that 2-day event?
Rob, it's been a 20-year journey for Muslims when it comes to experiencing the height of Islamophobia as a result of the widespread ideology of terrorism and extremism in the name of Islam. We started with Al-Qaeda, then it was the Taliban. Well, Taliban was before that. You got Hezbollah, ISIS, and the list continues to grow. And the people who are lured to that ideology continue to multiply. Of course, 9/11 was a moment for all Americans and the world to see that what impact terrorism can have on our world. It can potentially cripple economies. It can bring communities to a standstill. It's a threat. And I don't know, I can't speak for anyone else, but I feel I was one of the very first victims of the result of this. I left Pakistan that morning. I was in training of an imam as I graduated in November 2000. I spent 2001 in India and Pakistan learning how to engage in communities and how to, address issues. And I just left Pakistan that morning to enter into India that same afternoon. And by the time we got to New Delhi, the entire city was a ghost town. And the bus had India, Pakistan, bus or something. It was like the connection between the two countries. And as soon as that bus was taken into the bus depot, there was no one else there. Police were in mass numbers, pulling every person out, checking them. And again, this became the world for us as Muslims. And as we find this pocket of silence, which we hope is a pocket of stability that we can step on and start climbing towards humanizing ourselves in the greater world, incidents like this occur, which just drag us back down. It's like snakes and ladders. You're getting to 99 and there's that big snake there and you come all the way back down to 5, and it's just a constant struggle. No doubt it's an emotional roller coaster. And as an Imam and as a community leader for almost 20 years, I've witnessed this in many fronts, in many places at many different times. I just imagine what community members are going through who aren't, who are hiding. They're scared. Their kids are scared. You can go to school today. My kids are at school right now. My 2 daughters are wearing their hijab in high school right now, and they have friends and they're laughing and they're having a good time. God forbid something happens tomorrow or over the weekend. When they go back on Monday, they're not seen the same way as they were seen on Friday. So that's how real it is to us as Muslims. And as people will say what you just stated, he wasn't of sane mind. He came from England. He had this claim, which really didn't have any connection with the rabbi, the Jewish faith, and he wasn't stable. But again, it's the seal of Islam that's been placed on it, which makes all Muslims potential victims of someone's hatred, someone's vulgarity, someone's, just those mean eyes looking and staring them down. It's tough. So what I've been doing, Rob, in the last few years is that I went back to the drawing board. We have Islamophobia, it's continuing to flourish. We have Islamic extremism, its ideology continues to find more people to recruit. And the question is, what's the core and the center of this issue? Bob Roberts is doing an amazing job as he told us his journey of meeting with Muslims in Dallas and around the country, working with Imam Majid. And what he's trying to do is, as he said, build the friendships. He is trying to humanize Muslims in front of his congregation, in front of his people. And he articulated it's a struggle. And so I realized that it's practically impossible to humanize 1.9 billion people around the world and say, hey, they're good people. So I went to the core of the issue, and the core of the issue is what Muslims haven't been able to really articulate with clarity. And Islamophobes have taken that as an opportunity to make their cause, make their hatred in a $200 million industry, which is Islamophobia, and that is Sharia law. What is Sharia law? If we say we're a religion that believes in peace and inclusiveness and goodness, a religion where Muhammad, peace be upon him, migrated to Medina, to the north, leaving his hometown, being embraced by the 3 greatest Jewish tribes in that area, plus the 2 pagan tribes, and they created a charter of coming together and living together, protecting one another's physical rights and religious rights. Where did this religion go wrong? It went wrong, in my understanding, in the articulation and explanation of the Sharia law. And it was because of that I said, you know what? How many more fires are we going to constantly spend our time extinguishing? Because until a certain time, Rob, I had to actually apologize. You go around saying, hey, I'm very sorry for what happened there. I'm sorry for the stabbing in London. I'm sorry for what happened in Spain. But what am I apologizing for? Am I a human? Yes. Do I feel the pain? Yes. But am I the perpetrator? No. Is my religion the perpetrator or the instigator? No, it's not. So that made me realize if we're able to understand what Sharia law is about, and we're able to educate our communities on these things, then we don't have to spend that much time and effort humanizing Muslims, because what Muslims believe is this, and thus anyone who falls on any other sides of the spectrum, any common person can identify this person is an extremist, but that ain't their Islam, or this person is taking the religion way out of context and that's not Islam. And I'm not going to speak more about what we're doing. It's going to be coming out soon, but I've been working with a Jewish former federal attorney for 5 years. And the light is now at the end of the tunnel. And we're hoping to pursue that subject in a way that, God willing, it has not been pursued before. because there's an effort that the Muslims have been making. We only have two hands. We've been struggling to educate our community and protect them from extremist ideologies, which stem from ignorance, which stems from hatred, which stems from these emotions, and also juggle the American community by telling them, hey, we're not bad people, work with us, don't work against us. But our hands are getting tired now. And I think we need to bring everyone together and say, look, this is what's happening. This is what it is. If you know it, then we all can help each other take down extremism when it comes from the Islamic faith and take down those people who fuel this fire and many times known as Islamophobes. So, yeah.
Such important work. Dr. Roberts, you were there front and center that evening as well. What were your emotions and experiences that evening?
My wife and I were eating lunch. There was this Italian restaurant she'd been wanting me to go to. So I took her and we literally had our plate put on the table and started, all of a sudden my text blew up about 1 o'clock. And then I realized it was Charlie. I'd visited with Charlie just the day before. We were talking for 45 minutes on extremism and some things that we're going to try to do to deal with it. So I couldn't believe it. I thought, this is just too surreal. And so I looked at my wife and she said, let's eat fast. We need to get out of here. So we did. I dropped her off at the house and it hit me. Omar Suleiman is a friend. And I thought Omar would be ideal because at that time we thought he was a Palestinian extremist and he wasn't, but that's what we thought. And so I called Azhar Aziz to see if he knew where. Azhar Aziz is another friend of mine who's a Muslim leader, the DFW Metroplex. And he talked to Omar recently and he said he'd try to get him. So I called Omar and literally he was driving over that way. And I said, okay, Omar, so you're good to go. He said, well, I'm just going to try to get in. So I said, all right, let me see what I can do. So I called I live in Keller. Keller butts up to Colleyville. All these little suburbs run together. Charlie lives down the street about a half mile from me. His synagogue is about 2.5 miles from my front porch. And so I called the Keller mayor, told him what was going on, that Omar was over there and I didn't want anyone to, be confused about who he was or what he was trying to do. And so then he said, talk to the police chief. So he connected me with the police chief and got all the information. And that was all passed on to the Colleyville police chief. And so it wasn't a situation where it was more of a staging area for some of the families and the board chair of the synagogue and some others. And so that's where I went. And so he was able to get in. Omar was, and which was good. And then I was able to get Azhar in when he got there. And so me and him were there. Andrew was in he was at the situation room. And then later he came over to where we were. So Charlie's daughter was there with us, the Catholic priest, which was fascinating. He's Franciscan. And St. Francis became a hero of mine because he reached out to the Muslim community, which I've read some biographies, which is fascinating. But anyhow, we just sat there and we tried to think of scenarios. What could we do to help? And there's a sense of heaviness. I mean, the guy was obviously mentally disturbed. What might he be capable of doing or not? So there was heaviness. I wouldn't say there was a sense of panic and people wringing their hands and crying all over. What really wasn't much of that. It was more of a seriousness of, okay, what do we need to do? And the whole time you're thinking, okay, this can go down multiple ways. What do we need to be ready for? How do we handle this? How do we handle that? So that's basically what it was. My first greatest fear was that the hostages would be killed. That was a legitimate fear. And so tried to minister to his wife. And there were many Muslims that were ministering, Azhar, as well as another man named Dr. Reed, and these two women. In our community, there's a medical doctor named Dr. Shafi, who was the #2 Republican party person in the Fort Worth, Tarrant County side. And people wanted to depose him literally because he was a Muslim. This was a few years ago. I supported him. Several other people did. Well, in walks his wife. And, she's close to Charlie's wife. And so they embrace and some others and so forth. So it was more encouraging the family. Omar was thinking of different things that he could do. I was thinking of different things I could, just trying to figure out how we could help. That was it. I think my biggest fear was, as an evangelical, we've had a challenge at the point of Islamophobia A lot of people would disagree with the existence of the word while they're spreading it. They don't really understand what it is. So my biggest concern was, okay, how do we keep all the evangelical extremists, from saying, yeah, all Muslims are this way, and what do we do if there's a backlash against Muslims and so forth. And sadly, last weekend, if I'm not mistaken, Andrew, I'm sure you know about this, correct me, but a white supremacist group put in the driveways of Colleyville, anti-Semitic things, just beyond the pale of reason. So that's basically what we did. I think what makes me sad is how educated someone can be. I mean, this is a nice area, Keller, Colleyville, South Lake, how educated somebody can be and yet hate-filled. And they would never say they're hate-filled, but what's going on is they're afraid of the other, and they've identified the other as some extremist. I agree with what you were saying, Azhar. Not all Muslims are that way. Neither are all evangelicals the way a lot of people think we are. Just because you hear 3 or 4 of them who have big microphones or platforms, they don't speak for all of us at all. We throw up when we see them on TV just like you do. And we go, dang, I wish they were a Jew or a Muslim. I don't want them in our tribe, but they're there. And we all have to guard against that, and we have to push back. We have to call them out. We cannot be silent when those extremists speak. I just can't say, well, just ignore it and it'll go away. No, because Muslims, Jews, others, they don't know who those people are. So we have to speak up.
Well, and we're coming up on the top of the hour, so I'm going to bypass some questions here, but we've hit on a lot of those questions, what we're going to bypass. But I did want to make note. I mean, Islamophobia, the anti-Semitism, the attacks on Christians and people of all faces it's not here just in America, it's around the world. And I'd be remiss if we didn't make note of what's happening in Ukraine as we speak. And in Ukraine, a site of one of the greatest Jewish massacres, unfortunately, in our history. And that site being desecrated during this war that's happening right now with Russia and Ukraine. And so, but we know it's there. The question is okay, what can we do about it? And you all have all touched on it in your own way, and you're living a life about it. But for those who are listening today, what can each of us do to help do what you're doing, to help build those community bridges, and to help recognize that, what unites all of us as humans and people of this globe is much greater than what divides us. And I'll go back to you, Rabbi Paley.
Sure. Thanks for the question, and that's a question we continue to grapple with every day. We want to solve this problem. It seems so obvious, that here we are in 2022. Like we're still dealing with this. Like we're not smart enough. We don't have the resources or we have all the ability, right? We have all of the technology resources. We have all of the creativity, but sometimes we lack the will. And what we all can do, first of all, is to know that we're not powerless here. There's things that we can do, like show up. My teachers taught me that it's very easy, right, to pretend to care. You can do that, and most people do, but you cannot pretend to show up. You either do or you don't. And so one of the things that anyone can do is to show up. When there are people who are in need, show up, do something. Everyone can do something, right? And every little bit matters. We are not obligated to solve the problem on our own, but we are not free to desist from trying. And so every little bit matters, number one. Number two, I think that there are programs like the Multi-Faith Neighbors Network, like Friends for Good, like the things that Azhar is doing, that are welcoming to the community to be a part of the conversation. I would say also, there's just three of us here, and I'm happy to put my contact information. If you have a question about something, just call me, just email. I'm happy to come and talk and answer the question. As much as I think my mother would disagree, I'm not the chief rabbi of Texas, right? She thinks I am, but I'm actually not. I do not speak for all Jews who are, of a variety of minds. Our joke, I'm sure it's the same for Bob and Azhar as well. When you have two Jews in a room, you have three opinions, and so that's just sort of part of the way we work. We're not in agreement, and I don't speak for anybody, but I can give you one opinion, and I can tell you that it's my tradition is a tradition of seeking the welfare of the community. Pray for that community and do something, right? We have a prayer that we conclude a lot of our worship with that says, God who makes peace in heaven, we ask for the strength to make peace here on earth. And it's kind of odd because you would already think that heaven is peaceful, but it's not just, it just not happens that way. God has to actually make the peace happen even in heaven. And if God has to make peace in heaven, how much the more so do we need to do that work down here? Every little bit matters. And even the learning, even asking a question like Bob so beautifully described, wait, that doesn't sound right. Could that possibly be, maybe what I thought wasn't right? And being open to the challenge of growing. And that's not always easy, but it's absolutely necessary.
It's a great message. And Imam Azhar, I loved your message title, You Are Not Different, You Are the Difference. And what can you share for us out here to help us join your work and the work of your colleagues here in building these bridges?
Thank you. I just want to piggyback off what Rabbi said and just take a step back. As much as showing up is important and it speaks volumes, before showing up, I think it's imperative for each one of us to just get to know one another. There are people around you everywhere. I was standing in line to vote just a few days ago, and it was evident that even after this pandemic, everyone has decided to be in their own silo. Everyone will stand alone, not talk, no hi, no bye, no bless you. And that's quite dangerous because we're living in a world that we're choosing that's outside the world of reality. And when we get to just know one another, a lot of the stigma and the phobias and the fears that we are harboring, they just fall by the wayside. And so it's imperative for us to just get to know one another. There are people who are different than you in their practices, in their beliefs, in their cultures, where you work, where you study, where you commute to the downtown or back, where you're sitting in the Mavericks game. There's a lot of people that you can just say hi to. And by doing that, it breaks down a lot of the fear and the phobia, as I just stated. After that, you can just be with one another, invite one another, sit together. And when you're able to see a reflection of yourself in someone else, you will show up, you will stand up, you will hold hands, you will be shoulder to shoulder, and you will work towards one common goal. And that is, we all are one family in our city, in our street, in our neighborhood, and we're gonna grow together and we're gonna fulfill our aspirations and dreams of raising our families and our children together. That's the world we need to see. And that's not in the metaverse, that's here in reality. And I hope we all take this opportunity post-pandemic, praying that it's post-pandemic now, that we can actually build relationships with one another.
So important. And Dr. Roberts, your favorite words from anybody, you get the last word. What can we do?
Stand up, build a relationship. I'll add a new word, alignment. So it's like we have the law in one place, we have the relationships in another place, but you've got to have it all, and it's got to be aligned in a strategic manner, all the way from the top of the legal down to the grassroots where they are. So a practical way you can do that, I want to be unashamedly promoting something we're doing Sunday night at our church, March 6th, this Sunday night. You have to register, it's free, but go see it, globalfaithforum.com. Dr. Mohammed Al-Alisa is coming to speak. He's the president of the Muslim World League, one of the top Muslims in the world. And he is, They came up a couple of years with something called the Charter of Mecca, which promotes human rights, religious freedom, tolerance, all of this stuff. And so he's going to come and read that. And then Christian, Muslims, Jews are going to respond to it. But it's going to be everyday people there. There'll be some wonks, people from the White House, State Department, DHS. They're all coming. Mega church pastors, mega mosque leaders, and Andrew Paley. And many other rabbis will be there as well. And then the next day is nothing but training. But here's what's crazy. The next day, there's going to be, we're anticipating literally 600 to 700 that are going to come even the next day, because it'll be pastors, imams, and rabbis. We've been overwhelmed by the response. You do have to register. It's free, but you can get to know people. You can meet them. And you can find alignment. Okay, that's great. They're saying this at the top level. Now, what do we do at the grassroots? Alignment.
So important. Dr. Bob Roberts, Imam Azhar, Subedar, Rabbi Andrew Paley, cannot thank you enough. And Andy, thank you for your leadership in bringing this program. I'll turn it to you to close us out.
Yes, just thank you all for being here, and our panelists. Bob, I just have to tell everyone, I had no idea you had this event coming up. People might think I conspired with you to time our event to coincide with your event, but I'm glad it does. So thank you all again, and thanks to everyone for attending. Christy, thank you for being here, and Rob, great job. We'll close it. Thank you all.
Great. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everybody.